Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a new episode of Tarot on Tour. And today we are going to talk about Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka is a beautiful, green, luxuriant island very close to the southern eastern part of India. It's a wonderful country. I really cannot express enough how beautiful this country actually is. It is also full of surprises. When you land, most likely you land into the airport, international airport in Colombo, which is also the capital. And Colombo still looks like pretty much a modern city. With skyscrapers and the usual things that you would expect to find in a modern city. However, when you go to the coastline, which is basically it's called the Gold Face Beach, you'll see what I mean by when I talk about the fact that Sri Lanka is full of surprises. You just go there and you start immediately seeing storks and herons everywhere. There's nature literally just coming towards you, and it's just really a reminder that even in a city that is modern like Colombo, you still retain that atmosphere of a very natural and at times even wild place. Now, Sri Lanka is an incredibly beautiful country also when it comes to culture. Now, 70% of the population, according to the latest statistics, have reported to be of the Buddhist faith. There's also let's say in second position, there's Hinduism with about 17%, but you can also find some pockets of Christianity sparse here and there in the island, and there's also quite a strong population of Muslims. What we could tell that at first look, what really jumps to you is the fact that there's not, let's say, as many temples or the usual altars that you can find just pretty much anywhere in a Buddhist country. You don't see as many temples as we've seen, for example, in Thailand, or for example in Singapore or in other places in Southeast Asia. As a matter of fact, for example, when you want to actually see a temple, you really have to plan your trip there. It's not something that will happen anywhere in northern Thailand, where you can literally stumble upon a temple without even looking for one. And having said that, this doesn't mean necessarily that Sri Lanka is a less religious country than northern Thailand. It's just something that we've noticed. It's something that jumps to your attention after spending a couple of weeks in Thailand and being used to this sense of magic, integrated in a sense of religion, being present at pretty much every corner. Then you move into Sri Lanka and that is not longer the case. Therefore, when it comes to my research and my intentions on how to study the establishment of magic, of divination, and the development of these traditions in the Sri Lankan culture, I didn't know whether I needed to approach them from a religious point of view like I had, and we've seen it in northern Thailand, or more from an auspicious kind of, that kind of divination that is pertaining to perhaps more to China, to countries like China, and that are reflected in some areas in Singapore, like we've seen, or in a completely different way altogether. So it has been a bit of a challenge, to be honest with you, to find tarot decks, find shops that actually sell tarot decks. However, there are a fair bit of readers. There's a few tarot readers sparse in Colombo. If you Google that, you will see that there's a lot of them offering services of reading, divination, also in English. And there's a lot of bookstores. So the Sarasvati bookstore, for example, is a chain And there's also a bookstore which is called Yoga Books in Colombo that actually do sell tarot cards. However, talking about it with asking around, the easiest way to actually buy tarot decks and making sure that they are the authentic decks is to actually buy them online. Now, I have a few decks that I want to show you today, and they are all decks that I was lucky enough to either find or buy on my way to Sri Lanka. These are not decks that I actually could find in Sri Lanka itself, but because I was already thinking about the country and planning our way around the island, there's a couple of decks I believe that really hit the spot when it comes to expressing the value of divination and magic in a country like Sri Lanka. Well, let's have a look. So first of all, I wanted to talk about tea. Now, Sri Lanka is one of the biggest producers now in the world of tea per capita, and you immediately see that it's not something you cannot come to Sri Lanka and not wonder about how much tea do they exactly produce per year, because tea plantations are pretty much anywhere. There is a very known area around Kandy, which is very famous because you can take a very quirky train from Kandy to down south towards Ella. And it's famous because you can lean out, so the train goes in such a way that you can lean out of the window, and if someone is leaning out of a window before you, they can actually take a photo of you. And you must have seen photos of people doing that all over Instagram, for example. It is not advisable to do that because of safety reasons. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the most booked trains in the world. As a matter of fact, one of the easiest thing to do is actually basing yourself off Kandy and just doing day tours to north, for example, to Dambala, the cave temples, or Sigiriya, or down south to Ella and the tea plantations. Or you can also, alternatively, if you like the southern coast, if you like a bit of a sea breeze, you can base yourself off Marissa, and then you can even do a safari tour in the surrounding national parks. As you can see, I'm actually drinking a tea. I've always been a tea drinker rather than a coffee drinker, but the tea that you can find here is just on a completely different level. And that's why I really thought about using the Divine Tea Time Inspiration Cards, which is by author Tracy Loughlin, and is being published by Rockpool. So let's have a look, because this deck it's very beautiful in the sense that when you look at the aesthetics, it is completely down my alley. It's the kind of beautiful color shades of blue that I really enjoy. It comes in a 2-part box like this one. The booklet is actually tiny, as you can tell. Doesn't really say much. What it does say, though, it does give you some kind of a category of recipe selections. You can use tea for, and it also divides them in whether they are teas that come from herb or flowers, fruits or spices. It's basically explaining how to make tea. And you can buy the tea bags, which is something that we've all done, but you can also try and mix and match. If you have one of those plungers, for example, you can just buy the spices. You can even try your way at desiccating fruits and try and making tea out of those. There's an index of all of the teas that you can find on the cards in here. Now, what I rarely, to be honest, I just had a look at this booklet the first time I saw it, and then that was it, because I did not find it extremely helpful. But I don't think that was the design. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a clearly different kind of deck. It's not necessarily a divination deck, even though, yes, it can be seen as an oracle. Let me just zoom in. It is definitely an oracle because for each and every tea that we find here, we actually do have a keyword at the bottom. So we've got a number that identifies back in the guidebook. We've got the categories. So this one, for example, is a spice-based tea. You've got the composition of the tea. So this one is the star anise, fennel, and cinnamon tea. And then it literally gives you a recipe for making this tea, and then it gives you a property, and the property is also, it's, let's say that you can also identify that with a keyword. So that's a way in which, you know, you can use this deck. It's not just for the kind of recipe book that you may have on your kitchen bookshelves. It's also used as an oracle deck. What I really like is the fact that we've got some different artwork on the back. So each and every one of them is slightly different. Obviously, you've got the ingredients from the tea, and you've got a bit of artwork about, you know, the cup of teas or the glasses that have been used. But overall, this is really in tone with the country. This is really a deck that I was really happy that I found and then I brought with me to when I was visiting Sri Lanka, because it is something that it's literally just at every corner. It's something that whenever it's, for example, in summer, when it's right now, when it's 30, 34 degrees Celsius and a really high humidity, going to a place with air conditioning and having an iced tea is actually one of the best feelings in the world, because it refreshes you immediately, it makes you feel better, and your brain starts working again, because let's face it, it's just very difficult to, you know, plan your trips and also at the same time enjoy your holiday when you're sweating just by existing, just by standing, or even sitting, or even lying down. Just by breathing, you're already sweating. So obviously, when you can have the possibility to have something refreshing, it's always more than welcome. So this deck, as I was saying, can definitely be used as an oracle deck. And what I was thinking is that because of the colors, which I really like, by the way, I was trying to use it with a specific tarot deck, but let me show you how that will work. And I'm talking about the Sims tarot deck. Now, this is a deck that I actually bought all the way back in Bangkok. So you've seen this deck a couple of times, and it was also featured in one of my VRs because this deck really surprised me, and it surprised me in a good way, because it's a very interesting deck. It's one of those, let me zoom out, okay. It's one of those decks that obviously would not generally be a purchase of mine, because it's a cooperation of different artists, and it's based on Southeast Asian myths and legends, and that's the reason why I still find it cohesive and I still actually enjoy this deck. But I've talked at length about this deck in that VR that I was talking about, surprising decks. Now I may, if I remember, I'll actually make sure to put the link to that video so you can watch it if you haven't yet. So this deck is absolutely beautiful. Obviously, these are all Southeast Asian artists, and as you can see, each and every card shows you the name of the artist and the country of origin. So, for example, the Knight of Pentacles has been designed or created by Leonard Jim Narciso, and from the Philippines. Cambodia, we got Cambodia, Singapore, we got Indonesia, for example, Malaysia, etc. So it's really beautiful to see how these Vietnam as well, how these integrate together, how these actually work in the sense of, you know, translating the myths and legends that we all know about, not necessarily because we know these myths and legends, but we all belong to a culture, don't we? And every single culture in the world will have their own myths and legends. And it is very possible that whenever you were a child and you were struggling to sleep, perhaps your mom and dad would tell you a story, and that would have been something that perhaps they themselves would have heard from their parents because they had trouble sleeping. And so I'm just thinking about the value of stories and myths and legends in in someone's lives. It's something that is extremely important because it really not only, let's say, reminds us of where we're coming from, but it also reminds us of the fact that there's always been struggle. So whenever there's a story, a myth or a legend, you will notice that there's a very identifiable character arc, in the sense that there's always a hero. At the beginning of the story, the hero lives in a sort of a prison, the sense that he's not happy, they're not happy about their situation, they want to change, to do something, but they are not necessarily ready to do it. Then there's a challenge. At the beginning they deny the challenge because they just prefer to not change. Change is hard. Accepting change is even harder. And there's actually, I think it was in Star Wars, at a certain point, Luke is presented with the choice of joining the rebel cause to save basically the entire universe. But he says, I can't fight the Empire because I need to the crops. I need to harvest the crops. And so it's actually funny, it makes you laugh now, because we all watch Star Wars and we all know that not only he actually forgets about the crops, but obviously he becomes a hero in the quest to fight against the evil empire. But there's always the moment in which the hero is presented with a choice, and generally speaking, their first answer is to actually say no, because change is very difficult. So one thing that I really like about this combination between these two decks is that if we focus on the fact that we need change, because change is actually taking us to a different let's say a different level of life. Change is always, well, not always, but let's say that the will to change is motivated by the will to feel better, the will to have a better life, the will to go to a better place. So what I like is that whenever you are considering a change, what you need to do is always take your time, do your own research, and just see how you react to the possibilities of changing and to the challenges that go with that. And I think that one of the best things that I've learned how to do by the science, because at the end of the day it really sounds like a science, of drinking tea or of making tea, brewing tea, there's something that is ancient about that. It's as ancient as anything that we can think of, because literally just boiling some tea leaves, and not even tea leaves, because at the beginning they wouldn't have been called tea leaves. At the beginning they would have been just leaves. So someone, as soon as they discovered the fire, they started boiling water. And one thing that you try and taste it, you just you grab these leaves that grow all around you, you put them in I don't know what they were using to boil water, but in boiling water, and then you drink it afterwards, and you realize that not only it tasted good, but it actually is an incredible healing kind of plant. So there's all sorts of things related to that. Now, I believe that, and I love that the first card that we see is actually relaxing. I believe that tea should be drank, that moment in which you need to make a choice. You set out to decide what to do, where to go, what challenges to overcome. And you also need to think about your desired outcome. You need to look where you're going, because otherwise you don't necessarily know whether you're going down the right path or not. And sometimes you just need to step back and relax and perhaps have a cup of tea. And so I really like to use these two decks together. Whenever there's a bit of perhaps a bit of noise, a bit of chaos, something that needs to be overcome, and you just need to take a step back, and you need to shut out all the noises around you which are just distracting you, and go back to that kind of atmosphere in which you feel confident with yourself and you feel like you can do something. even if the task ahead is really daunting, is very demanding, or is really scary, you can do that if you just take some time off and you just, you know, just take back all of the energies that you spent or that someone has taken away from you, and have a cup of tea. It's just something that really relaxes you. And I keep on drawing these relaxing cards. As you can tell, obviously there's more than one relaxing, or there's more than one refreshing, for example, etc., because obviously there's so many words that you can associate with the types of tea that are described here. But I really, really like this association, and it's relaxing or soothing. It's something that it really works. I think this is really, really, if you look at this example, we've got the toxin with the dandelion tea between the Three of Swords and the Ten of Pentacles. So it really, again, gives you that idea of getting rid. The toxin means getting rid of something toxic. And to me, something toxic can be also in your mind. It does not necessarily have to be something toxic in your body. So if it's something toxic in your mind, the Three of Swords will show you, the swords being the suit of the mind, will show you that you're overthinking something, you're worrying too much, you're over worrying. So get rid of that toxic worries. And you know, in this case with the dandelion tea, and then you can move on and achieve whatever you're looking for, because the Ten of Pentacles is the maximum achievement in a project, for example, or also you know, the best promotion you can get in a career, or even a windfall or a certain amount of money that comes out of an investment. But before you get here, there is this encouragement, but there's also a reminder to say that when you're overthinking, the only thing you can do is not, again, think even more, but just take a step back and detox from all that toxicity. So it is, you know, relaxing between the Star and the Knight of Swords, with the Thyme, Target and Verbena tea, or the calming with the Cherry Blossom, between the Eight of Wands and the Eight of Cups, which is also very interesting as a combination, because we know the energy of the eight. The eight is numerologically the sum of, you know, two fours. So it's when the consolidation of the four becomes too much, and there is that need to break through the walls and just, you know, just explode probably. Which you can definitely find in the energy of the Eight of Wands, which is a suit of fire, but you can also find it in the energy of the suit of water with the Eight of Cups, because there is that sense of being fed up with something that we need to leave behind. But the energy in this case is overflowing, so there is a need for calm. I really do believe that these two, you know, when you accept the fact that perhaps on an aesthetic level they don't necessarily match, but there is a lot of communication going on between these two, and I really like pairing them up together. But these are not the only ones that I like to pair up together with the Divine Tea Time. Let's have a look at another deck. So this time what I'm showing you is the Sacred Nature Oracle, which has very quickly, I must say, become one of my favorite oracles of all time. This oracle not only pairs up some of my declared passions like photography, for example, but also it always refers back to a plant, and I really do believe that the keywords on these cards are incredibly powerful. I've actually used it a couple of times. I've been in a group. When I was in Thailand, I was touring with a group, and I've done a reading for a member of a group, and she had the same feelings towards this deck. She's also a tarot reader, and she was saying that she really liked the way in which the images on the card are associated to the keywords. It's a very powerful result. What I like about these two together, so the Divine Tea Time, which is the one we've seen before, it's just that I've actually flipped it, because normally, well, depending if you want to pick a card, you have to, you know, you want to do it by looking at the images, or if you simply want to have a look at what tea we're talking about and the keywords that are associated to that particular tea. I actually like using these two this way when I pair them up. And I use them in the morning whenever I need to do some meditation, which is something that is actually very easy to dedicate ourselves to meditation whenever we're traveling, unless you're on a tight schedule, of course. But when you're not at home, it's relatively easier, for me at least, to meditate, because we have the possibility to look at ourselves from a different perspective. We're not at home. You're not the person that does everything around the house. You're not the person that cooks. You're not the person that tends to all of the needs of everyone around you. You're yourself more when I travel, or at least in my case, I have the opportunity to, because I'm not so busy anymore with the chores or with, taking care of the cats and everything. I kind of have a little bit more time to reflect on who I am, who I want to be, where I'm going, what is something that I can expect or I want to happen in the future, in the near future. And I believe that meditation actually helps you, not necessarily obtaining whatever it is that you want to do, but at least putting you in the state of mind of being more receptive of the energies that you need in order to do that. So these two are really beautiful together. The colors, it's one of those examples in which you actually ask yourself, is it really working? And once you step away from your busy mind, and hence the tea. Again, I know that there's a lot of tea that are actually tonics. You can drink them for energy, for example. But in my case, and the experience that I've had in Sri Lanka related to tea is always an experience of smoothing out all the wrinkles of life and just soothing everything, and just feeling like you're actually trying to stepping back and relaxing and not being as hard on yourself as you have to be whenever you're back at home. And because this oracle deck kind of have the same energy, these two pair up really well together. So what you can do is you just go through the cards the same way that I'm doing right now. Or for example, if there's a combination that really calls to you, like for example, in this moment I actually do, it is very important for me to think about stability. There's a lot of things that are always in movement, they're always changing. And no one likes change, but we all accept that we need to go through change in life just to move forward, to just get to a better position. And obviously there's been a lot of changes, but the changes are good as long as they take you to stability. So stability has to be your goal. So in this case, I like to see what the recommendation of the Divine Tea Time Inspiration cards is in order to achieve that stability. So we're talking about, so it's a flower tea, red clover tea. Bring 4 cups of water to the boil, then remove the heat. 1 cup of red clover flowers and a sprig of mint. I love mint. So add honey if you want some sweetener. This is mostly related to calming. This is a calming kind of a tea. And it is true that whenever you're panicking, there's no way you can achieve stability. So this is something that I like to do in the morning, for example, whenever I still have those ghosts that, are still with you whenever you go, even when you go away, whenever you have worries, if you suffer from anxiety, you will recognize that it's impossible to leave your ghosts behind, because they're still with you no matter where you go. So one way to actually process that, to deal with that, is to accept them. And that is definitely the way of Buddhism. There is a very clear path that has been, let's say, shown by Machi Glapdron, which is was, let's say, a tantric dakini from the Tibetan Buddhism in around the 1100. She was born in the 1124, if I'm not wrong, in Tibet, so almost 1,000 years ago. But she was an extremely modern woman, and she was traveling a lot. She refused to get married and have kids. She was very independent, But she also brought forward some teachings of Buddhism, and one of them was not to fight your demons, because if you constantly fight your demons, what you end up doing is actually fueling them. So you don't want to do that. What you need to do is accept that you have these demons and actually try and establish some kind of a connection. So understanding, compassion is the way of the Buddha, and it's very important to apply that, to receive the guidance, accept this guidance. And in order to do that, you have to be in a calming environment. When you're panicking, you can't do anything. Whatever you're doing is definitely not going to go well. So this is all, every card that I pull is just a reminder of exactly this. So these are, things, traditions from ancestral wisdom, and we need to apply deep listening in order to be able to focus and use the introspection in order to be able to achieve all of this. So this is a very calming ritual. Sri Lanka, this episode is all going to be about rituals. Ritual about being, grounding yourself, about being back to your creative state, about being back to your essence with nature, your oneness with nature, and your wholenessness with nature. And it's all about being able to do that without the noise on the background, without any of those noises to be distracting you. And it's something that it's very, let me tell you, it's actually very difficult to do, because Sri Lanka is a very noisy place. If you go down the road, if you try and cross the road, for example, it's very difficult because there is the tendency not to stop. Cars and tuk-tuks and buses and motorbike drivers, they don't necessarily stop for you. There's not the concept of red light and green light is not as black and white, and so you need to be calm, you need to be assertive, you need to, if you want to cross the street, you just need to make sure to make eye contact and show someone that you're actually going to cross. And sometimes if you put a hand, you just signal to them that you're going to cross, so they actually stop for you. But it's something that you need to learn how to do. It's not something that comes to you naturally if you are not used to it. And it creates a little bit of panic. So as I was saying before, there is this constant reminder of whenever you live in the noisiest of the environments, there is this constant reminder to actually take a step back and calm down. And I really believe that these two decks achieve that. So I really like them together. But Sri Lanka is also a very spiritual kind of place. As I was saying before, you do not find a constant reminder of, the presence of religion with a lot of temples along the road like you do in Thailand or in other countries in Southeast Asia. But that doesn't mean that you cannot feel the spirituality of the place itself. And as a matter of fact, there are a lot of places around the country that have that kind of energy, that kind of vibe, and that we've been visiting. And some of them are incredibly powerful, and they're also incredibly beautiful. So I highly recommend, Damballa, the cave temples, or Sigiriya itself, or anywhere around Kandy. Kandy itself has got a couple of really beautiful temples that you can admire. What that did to me was it just taught me a really valuable lesson. It just taught me that one very important thing about spirituality is that there is no certain way to achieve it. There is no manual 101 of achieving a spiritual level. It's all about us, it's all about yourself, it's all about feeling it inside yourself and cultivating that kind of vibe that you think will lead you to that. And I think that these two decks came to me in a very special way, because I was in an Asia bookstore in Chiang Mai, and I was thinking about what decks to take with me to Sri Lanka. And I saw this one, the Dream Ritual Oracle cards, and I had seen a couple of walkthroughs and I already liked it. But at first, it didn't necessarily inspire me specifically for Sri Lanka. But then when I saw the Spiritual Tarot, and I thought about in my head, you know, I reminded myself about a couple of images I had seen of the Spiritual Tarot and a couple of images from the Dream Ritual Oracle cards, and I thought to myself, this actually might work. And so let's have a look. And I bought them, you know, almost sight unseen, in the sense that I did, well, obviously they are wrapped up. These decks are all original, all authentic, and when you buy them, they're still wrapped up and you can't open them, which is absolutely fine. But what happened when I bought this deck, the Dream Ritual Oracle cards, I was there and I was looking at all the decks and I was kind of overwhelmed, as I normally feel whenever there's perhaps too many decks. And next to me there was this lady, and I felt like we were in a very similar situation. And she was looking at the decks and she looked a bit lost. And so I just, you know, I started talking and I was saying, there's too many, isn't there? You know, hoping for a conversation in English because I don't speak Thai. And her English was definitely better than my Thai. So we started having this conversation using Google Translate, in which you actually literally speak to the receiver, the microphone on the phone, and Google Translate, just spits out the sentences in whatever language you want it to be translated. So she was speaking Thai into my phone, and then my phone was showing me the text in English and what she was saying. And she was saying that she's a tarot reader. She's been reading tarot for over 20 years. And she was very sad. She did not explain why. But she said she was there traveling for a very sad circumstance. And I kind of, because it was difficult to communicate, obviously, I said, I hope you're okay. She understood what I meant. But basically this lady is quite famous. She's also a tarot tuber, and so I will put her channel in the comments below. However, she only her videos are in Thai language, and I don't know whether you can actually activate some kind of automatic captions or subtitles from Thai into English. But in any case, I subscribed to her channel, she subscribed to mine. We started talking, with Google Translate, we started talking about decks. And at that moment, it came to me, explaining to her that I was going to Sri Lanka, it came to me of how green the country must have been, even though I hadn't been there already. And I thought to myself, this deck would actually really, it could possibly be a very good deck to use in the country, because we still have all of the elements, for example, the lotus flower, we still have all of the elements of this Southeast Asian kind of environment and vegetation, but you also have the greenery of the tea leaf plantations, and you also have this kind of dreamy atmosphere that you can definitely see in a lot of places around here. So I bought this deck, and then I thought that it would pair up really, really well with the Spiritual Tarot. By the way, sorry about the lights, the reflection of the lights. There's nothing much I can do about it. I'm not at home, so obviously this is not my usual gear, or the usual gear that I will use for filming these videos. But if we have a look now, so the Spiritual Tarot is a deck published by Lo Scarabeo. It's by Tarica Di Maggio, Lucia Mattioli, and Francesca Fravolini. It's a very recent deck. I think it's been published only a couple of months ago. I don't know whether it is available already in Australia or not. It will be. If it's not now, it will be. Be patient. They tend to come to Australia sooner or later. So these two are really mind-blowing. Together they're just absolutely fantastic. You've got prepare between the Ace of Wands and Death. Prepare, use the fiery energy you have right now to prepare to a transformation. There is so much, these two are so conducive of a conversation. Then again, I feel like there's so much going on that I feel I can actually take a step back and let these two do the job, because they don't necessarily need me to be there. I'm just the one flipping the cards, and every now and then just looking at them, at the artwork, which is really beautiful on both of these decks, and reading aloud the keywords, you know, and making a reflection and saying, oh look, gratitude between the Ten of Swords and the High Priestess, and you know, thinking about it. But these two are really, really important for what I'm going to express. So I think that spirituality can be achieved in many different ways. As I was saying before, there's no manual 101 on how to become a spiritual person. And I also believe that a spiritual person doesn't necessarily have to be a religious person, although the two can definitely be combined. But what traveling through Southeast Asia has taught me is that you can definitely have traditions mixed in with religion, mixed in with magic. And that has been going on, willing it or not. If we can deny that as much as we want, but that has actually been going on since the dawn of times. Magic is just as antique as an ancient as religion and spirituality and tradition, because many of the things that we still see happening, for example, in many practices associated with some religions such as Buddhism, for example, or Hinduism, are coming from traditions that were born in magic. So when I aired the episode about Northern Thailand, talking about the fact that magic is everywhere, there is an everyday magic aspect of life in Northern Thailand especially, I was really talking about traditions. The fact that you sit in a certain way to bring yourself good luck, or you avoid crossing a certain path because you want to avoid bad luck, or you make offerings of a certain color because you were born on a Sunday and the offerings then need to be in red as opposed to yellow, for example. All of these things, when you apply some kind of a logic to them, well, they don't have much logic now, do they? I mean, why my offering candles should be red simply because I was born on a Sunday, when, for example, someone born on a Saturday should offer some purple candle? These are things that are ancient because they're not being born yesterday. People keep on doing that because their parents taught them, and their parents, were talking about them by their own parents and so on and so forth. So we talk about tradition. And one thing that I really appreciate, for example, now that I'm really doing a lot of research on magic and the essential state of magic when we talk about the dawn of time, so the essence of magic, the origin of magic itself, I'm really appreciating the fact that it's all related to something that we need to prepare ourselves for. So obviously the avoiding bad luck, the bringing good luck into your life, all of these things is because people want to preserve their lives. It comes from a desire and a need to survive something, to survive perhaps a difficult time, to survive, trying times, obstacles, challenges, and stuff like that. And so whenever we see these rituals, and again, I want to bring back the attention to the ritualistic part of the nature of magic in here and divination in Sri Lanka. Going back to rituals is very important for everyone, because on the one hand, you're part of a community. When you do the same rituals all together, for example, you're part of that community, you're not alone, your chances of surviving are much bigger. And the same goes for pretty much everything that is done in the community. So these religions that are so strongly let's say integrated, woven in the everyday life in both countries, because I've seen that in Northern Thailand and I've seen it here in Sri Lanka. These practices, these traditions are incredibly important, and they also create that natural line of perpetuity, of continuity between generations. Those are the things you teach your children, and you actually tell them to teach their own children, and so on and so forth. And I really like the way in which you can achieve spirituality even by just focusing on perpetuating these traditions. And I think that these two decks really show you the way to that. It's a very intuitive kind of reading, as you can tell probably by now. The spiritual tarot does not necessarily follow an RWS kind of, it is an RWS deck as interpretation, but the, let's say the images chosen are not your typical RWS images. I'm referring mostly to the minors, for example, even though the Eight of Swords still is quite traditional. But for example, we got the Seven of Swords, which is slightly different from what we're used to see. You know, it's, and so on and so forth. There's a very really good booklet. So it's one of those guidebooks you actually don't want to skip, because it does actually talk about the images portrayed in the card, and it does explain why these images are, have been chosen to represent these cards. And some of the meanings are slightly different as well. So you will still have the, you know, the resilience and the sticking to your guns and being against everyone else in the Seven of Wands. But in other cards you may not exactly see the same, what you're used to see, what I mean. It's a really beautiful deck though. I really enjoy it. The only thing is I'm always thinking about videos, and if you're like me, if you're a tarot tuber, or even if you have an account on Instagram and you like to show the cards, this kind of reflectiveness, it's not the best when it comes to the reflection of the lights. But that is just me, and you know, the majority of tarot readers don't necessarily have to film videos about it, so I don't think it's a massive problem. By the way, sorry about the noises, but we have been visited by monkeys. So there's a lot of monkeys where we are staying at. It's a very beautiful place. It's called Mimosa in Mirissa, in the town of Mirissa, which is on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, and it's on the beach basically, and there's heaps of monkeys, and they love it to jump on the roof. And so the noises you're hearing, these are actual monkeys having a party on our rooftop. So these two decks are the Spiritual Tarot and the Dream Ritual Oracle card. So welcome to the second part of this video. What happened was that at the end of the first part, I was still talking and there was a massive blackout and all of the lights switched off. And because it was towards the evening, I did not have enough available light from the windows to keep on filming. And so I had to stop, and the day after, the blackout went on for another 18 hours. So it was rather difficult for me to be able to film and keep on filming. And so I'm just now, you know, a few days later, I just have to pick it up from where I left. I just wanted to show you a pairing between these three decks, because these are very much expressing what I believe to be the spiritual energy we were talking about, you know, in connection to this place, Sri Lanka, which is, as I said before, a place that is rather less transactional when it comes to religion than perhaps certain parts of Thailand, but is certainly very much spiritual when it comes to personal approaches of the Sri Lankan people to the religion, whether that be Buddhism or Hinduism or, you know, Islam, or even the Catholic Church. Now, these three decks are purely based on, well, you see that you probably know them already. This is the Osho Zen Tarot, and obviously Osho was a spiritual leader that was based on Zen Buddhism. And the Kali Oracle by Alana Fairchild is mostly based on the incredible power of this deity, which is part of the Hinduism. And then we got the God Tarot, which is it's just 22 cards, so majors only. And this has been published in Thailand and purchased by me in I think it was still Bangkok, no, probably Chiang Mai. And it is based on iconography from Buddhism, from Hinduism as well. What I do find is that these three actually pair up really well together, the three of them. You probably know very well the Osho Tarot, the Osho Zen. This is actually the pocket edition, which is very smart and convenient, I must say, because, you know, even though the size of the tarot cards of the normal size are not extremely big, I mean, there's oracle decks that are much bigger. The booklet and the box overall are rather large. So whenever we're traveling, I'm always keeping an eye out for pocket decks because you know, it just makes it easier to just carry decks with you. Now this is the God Tarot. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily remember whether I did show this one when I did the Northern Thailand part of my Tarot on Tour series. In any case, it's very interesting because it's been made by the same author as the so Sukji P, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, sorry about that, but it's the same author of the Kuan Yin Oracle deck, which I did buy in Bangkok, and I actually did a pairing between the God Tarot and the Kuan Yin Oracle. It's got a couple of cards in which it does explain the meanings of, you know, because it does rename the majors, so it shows you the cards as they have been renamed and then the association to the original arcanas. It's a very beautiful, when it comes to artist expressions and through the colors and the pencil work, it's actually a really beautiful deck. And because of the way in which the colors are saturated, I actually thought that it was a good idea to pair it up with these other two decks. Obviously, because this is a majors only, I have to level out the other two because otherwise we'll have major differences, you know, when it comes to the number of cards. But I generally think that these three really evoke something. So I really like the fact that we've got, on the one hand, we've got the Osho Zen Tarot that still, even though it does kind of follow the distinction between majors and minors and the suits in the minors according to the RWS, it actually does its own thing. And because of that, there is some kind of a renaming, as you can see here. This is Inner Voices, referring back to the High Priestess. So basically, we have a tarot deck that is a full 78 cards, paired up with an arcana, a major arcanas only deck that is also renaming the majors. And then we got a deck that is, because of its pocket size, on the backs it only shows you the images, and then obviously when you turn it around it just describes what the energies of the card are, what the references to the characters in the card, and there's a bit of a what you can normally find in the actual booklet. So I really believe that what we can do is to focus on the words that are coming to us, you know, whenever we look at this. So we have this magical, strong power of Yuga Shakti, you know, between the slowing down and the change. And this is absolutely a really strong message, because it looks as if it's telling you that perhaps the energy that you're putting into this massive change needs a break. It needs a break for the time being, because perhaps you're just trying too hard, perhaps you're just pushing too hard, and it's not necessarily yielding the results that you're looking for. And we got existence, art, and Bagalamukhi. It's very important to kind of get to know the Kali oracle, because of basically because it's depicting you know, characters from Hinduism, from the religious literature. And we don't necessarily, unless you're very savvy about that, we're not necessarily immediately associating something, a name, for example, with an energy or a power or a keyword. But it is very interesting to see how these three communicate with each other. you know, going with the flow and the fortune, for example, with Krishna. So this is, you can have what you need and desire. This is just an incredible message to say that you have achieved that kind of fortune by going with the flow, by actually, instead of, you know, going against it, which sometimes is required to achieve what you want to achieve. In that case, the recommendation is actually to let yourself go, which is actually very typical of this deck. The Osho Zen is all about the Zen part of Buddhism, which is basically focusing on impermanence of things. I'm just trying to not to go delve too deep into these concepts, because there's a lot that can be said, and if I follow down the rabbit hole, no one's gonna stop me. So I really enjoy, especially these two paired up together, and the fact that the Kali Oracle brings up even more the colors of both of the other decks, as you can see yourself. It's something really beautiful. I'm very happy whenever I see these correspondences between the decks. So this, as we said, this is the God Tarot, is a Siamese Thai production. This is the Osho Zen Pocket Size Tarot and the Kali Oracle. And this concludes my Tarot on Tour Sri Lanka video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. More to come. Have a great day.